Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva, and today we are in for a real treat. We have basically an hour of Mark Twain, and no, unfortunately, Hal Holbrook is not here to sit in and portray him, although we will showcase some images of Mr. Holbrook. We're honored to have Dr. Cindy Lovell, who is the executive director at the Mark Twain House and Museum. And she has told me a few stories, probably is looked upon by her family as a bit of a Twain nut, but we will let her talk a little bit. Dr. Cindy, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Larry. It's great to be here.
So share that tale. Your family obviously, don't bother when she's dealing with Mark Twain.
It was commonly said in my house, don't get her started. And I have to say my two children are grown, but when they were growing up, they would actually warn their friends before they came to our house for the first time. Now, our mom's going to have, you'll see Mark Twain's everywhere in our house, and within 60 seconds, no matter what you say, our mom will find some way to link it to Mark Twain, and they would warn their friends. But my daughter was very smart. When she got old enough to bring boyfriends home, I was so naive. Of course, I operate under the assumption that everyone like myself, everyone is just reading Mark Twain, loving Mark Twain, thinking about Mark Twain. And these young men, different boys that she would bring home, would be in the house maybe a minute, 2 minutes at the max before they'd look around and see Mark Twain's picture on the wall and say, my favorite Mark Twain quote is, and then they would proceed. Well, here she was cluing them in ahead of time. Make sure you have a Mark Twain quote memorized, and my mom will love you. And she was right, and I still love all those boys.
I was going to say, how many boys that age are coming up with quotes? That's
she schooled them properly.
Give them crib notes here. Write it on your wrist so you can remember it. Now, tell me a little bit. First of all, where do you hail from?
Originally from central Pennsylvania. I grew up on a farm there. That's where I met Mark Twain in the 4th grade. I had a great teacher. He never read us an entire book. Instead, every day, he read a chapter from some great book. He would put it in context. He would maybe interrupt himself while he was reading just to sort of set the stage or explain a thing. And what he did was get 35 kids very excited about reading because every day it was a different book. And I often think back to that year. I was, I missed 10 days of school that year. I still have my report card. And I think, I'm so glad I didn't miss that particular day when he read the whitewashing chapter from Tom Sawyer. I grew up on a farm. I was the oldest girl, and I thought I had too many chores. And hearing Tom Sawyer get paid by his friends to do his work for him fascinated me. And I got my hands on that book, and I've pretty much been rereading Tom Sawyer since the 4th grade. I love that book.
Yeah, that's something I've come to learn. I don't know. I think I could be wrong. It's more of a female trait than a male trait. Tend to, if there's a book or their diary or something, whatever that is really personal to them, they will reread the same thing over and over. It's kind of like even with movies. Do you find like you watch this?
Yeah, I have sort of top 5. You're right, top 5 movies. Anything with Bill Murray, but a top 5
there. You go,
there.
Yeah.
But my ex-husband used to just be puzzled why I would read Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn again and again and again. And finally I put it to him this way, and I'll share this in case other people find this useful. I'd say, well, you love steak. Did you eat it once and stop eating it?
Exactly.
You go back and have steak once a week or so. And he finally said, all right, I get your point.
So Mark Twain is your filet mignon.
There you
right?
go.
There you go. To my left here we have, in 2015, Time Magazine has put out a periodical on Mark Twain and refers to Mark Twain as Downton Abbey's American cousin. And again, of course, I was the one that used to say, oh, Downtown Abbey. I'm sure I wasn't the only one because it'd be like, what's Downton? So I don't know. So
that's it.
But what did you think about that statement?
Well, we're very proud of the Mark Twain House in Hartford, and I think everyone in Hartford is proud of it. In 2012, National Geographic published a book, The 10 Best of Everything, and National Geographic identified the Mark Twain House as one of the 10 best historic homes in the entire world. Not Connecticut, not the U.S., but the entire world. In fact, only 3 homes made that list. Monticello, Mount Vernon, and Mark Twain House in Hartford. So when Time published this this little commemorative edition, which we're very proud of. And they worked closely with our curatorial staff and with other Mark Twain sites around the country. We were as surprised as anyone to open up and find that they had referred to the Mark Twain House as Downton Abbey's American cousin. We were very proud of that. We are certainly touting that everywhere we go. And you know, we did host a beautiful exhibition a year ago called At Your Service, and it was all about the lives of the servants in Mark Twain's family. A wonderful story in and of itself. He was very close to his servants. They came, they stayed forever. They didn't leave. There wasn't turnover. He was a good guy to work for, apparently. So that was special to have that reference.
Now, give us a little a thumbnail sketch. I know it's a lot to ask in a short time, but again, Mark Twain was born where?
He was born in Florida, Missouri. A lot of people think he was born in Hannibal, but he's born in a tiny little spot called Florida, Missouri. He lived there for the first 4 years of his life. His father couldn't make a go of it there. His dad was a smart man, a very well-respected man, a man of integrity. He had a great reputation, but he was not a good businessman. They moved to Hannibal, Missouri, on the banks of the Mississippi River when Sam was just 4 years old. And that's where he lived till he was 17 years old, from the age of 4 to 17. And that's where most of the adventures of Tom Sawyer really took place. It tickles me that book is called fiction, because the people, the characters, the events, you know, the places in the book were real. They existed. He just changed a few names and threw in a little pizzazz here and there. But the book is very much set in in his own real life adventures. So Florida to Hannibal, and then his dad died when he was 11. At the age of 12, he had to go to work to support himself as a typesetter's apprentice. So from the age of 12 on, he did that. He worked and supported himself. And I love to think about this. He went to St. Louis when he was 17. He was a typesetter. He wrote a letter home to his brother in Hannibal, who still lived at home with their mother, and said, "Don't tell Ma, but I've saved up money and I'm going to New York City to see the Crystal Palace." And the letter still exists. The family saved all these letters, and it's wonderful that this wide-eyed boy arrived, you know, on a Sunday morning bright and early, and stepped off this boat and strolled down Broadway and saw Barnum's Museum, and, you know, wrote home all these details and just set himself out onto the world. What a life. You know, what a life. He was a keen observer. He was curious about everything. And, you know, from that point on, you could just say he lived everywhere. In his entire life, he only owned 3 homes. Hartford, the longest. This is the home he and his wife built to raise their family. And I think a lot of people think of the old white-haired Mark Twain, but I like to think of young Sam, the boy, and I love to think of Sam Clemens, the family man.
There's we'll call middle-aged Mark Twain.
yeah, that's a great shot from the Nashville Public Library. Back in 2010, we called that the year of Mark Twain. We were all sort of honoring the 100th anniversary of his death, and all across the country, a lot of events were going on, and that was something Nashville put together, and of course that's where I worked on my little Twain CD at that time to honor him. But
now it's interesting, over these last few years, you've got, of course, to me, in Mr. Hal Holbrook, who I can remember back in 1967. I remember it was a Monday night on CBS and had this Mark Twain Tonight. And I was like, and I only watched a little bit of it. I'm going to be honest, I don't think because probably it was on until 11 o'clock at night. But I just like, you know, wow, what is this all about? And then, of course, he'd already been doing that for a good 12 years or more, and it's became this legacy to a man who I know is Oscar nominated and various other roles, and I believe is also nominated for Tonys and probably Grammys for spoken word. I mean, but yet, what a legacy that when the time comes and he leaves us, that he's got this especially at the top of the list.
It really is the pinnacle of his career, and I think Hal believes that too. There is a documentary filmed called Holbrook Twain, An American Odyssey, 2015 release, that tells the story of Hal working all these years, becoming Mark Twain. It's a powerful documentary, and we actually got the filmmakers out to Hannibal, and they filmed, you know, the beloved Mississippi River and all that. But you know, I didn't know Hal Holbrook initially. I went to see him the first time in Iowa, when I was in Iowa getting my PhD, and I heard he was in town or going to be nearby, and so that was quite an adventure for me to get to see him that very first time. And my son, I had him send me the big album cover so I could hopefully meet him and get him to sign it, and it was just I can't even describe to see him that first time walk out on that stage. It's the closest you'll ever get to seeing Mark Twain, hearing Mark Twain. He knew Claire Clemens. He met with her. He knew Clara's daughter. You know, he could sit down and talk to people.
Well, because he's been doing this since what, the mid to late 50s.
60 years. He just, you know, he performed in Hartford on his 90th birthday. On his 90th birthday, he performed at the Bushnell for us in his Mark Twain Tonight. And his shows get better and better and better. He does new material. People don't realize it isn't some old, you know, show that throws back to the day of, you know, just talking Tom and Huck. I mean, it's brilliant. He has so much material memorized about Mark Twain. He learns new material every year, and he unveils it. Hal describes it as reading the papers in the morning and getting fired up, and that's what he decides what he's going to perform that night. He's brilliant.
It's funny because, you know, with so many other guests, you know, they have a book to promote or to talk about, which is always great, a variety of subjects. You don't necessarily have a book. You have some projects, and of course the main one is as executive director of the Mark Twain House and Museum. But it's almost like you know, like you have a book in you. Someday you will put a book together, you know,
I've written a couple of books
on your experiences with this subject matter, in addition to whatever else.
Yeah, I've written some children's books, and I have Mark Twain slipped in there as a thumbprint, and lots of articles, essays, chapters for books, and things like that. I'm working on one right now. This is a nice thought. We call ourselves Twainiacs, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. And two of my favorite Twainiacs, Kevin Macdonald and Kent Rasmussen, who are both excellent Twain scholars in their own right, approached a lot of us with the idea of publishing a book with youth as the center focus. Now, his nickname from his wife was Youth. And think of that. He was 10 years older than his wife, but he was such a boyish character. He just, you know, I think he just always embodied that spirit of Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, and she nicknamed him Youth. That's what she called him. He called her Gravity, which I just love. But these fellows decided we should do a book and let youth be the theme, and so they approached different Twain scholars and asked them to write a chapter about a particular person with youth as the theme. So I'm writing, well, I've written, and now in the final editing stages, my chapter's on Clara, the middle daughter. Mm-hmm. So Mark Twain is bigger than anything. It's, in my mind, he's bigger than anything. To think that he is not with us anymore is sort of incomprehensible to me. I used to tell the folks in Hannibal, whether they donated to preserve the museum or not, to preserve his legacy, whether those buildings all blew away, didn't really matter. He had ensured his legacy with the words that he wrote. But wouldn't it be great if people donated to preserve these wonderful homes of his? So,
now, prior to coming to Hartford, which I would say, not being a betting man, but probably is one of the greatest career decisions or opportunities that you probably feel you've ever been blessed with, to come here and be the executive director.
Right. If you read Tom Sawyer, you know that I never go to work a day in my life. Yeah. You know, Tom Sawyer discovered, Mark Twain wrote, work consists of what a body is obliged to do, play consists of what a body is not obliged to do. And this was the Hartford home was the first Mark Twain site I ever visited, and I was mesmerized and captivated, and you know, I became a member and a donor and supporting from afar. Never in my wildest dreams could I imagine I would have a key to that house, and I did. I ended up in Hannibal. I went to the University of Iowa for my PhD, and it's close to Hannibal, relatively speaking, 2 hours, and I'd go down to Hannibal when I could and sponge up all of that Tom and Huck atmosphere. And then I became a professor at my alma mater in Florida, Stetson University. Now this was great. You know, if you're living in Florida, you know the winters are good. This is my alma mater. I had tenure. I had a great life. Well, I bought a house in Hannibal on the same street young Sam Clemens grew up on, Hill Street, which runs right down to the Mississippi River. Loved it. And in the summer of 2006, I volunteered and helped them with a teacher workshop and had the time of my life. And somebody there at the museum, you know, saw how well it went and said, gee, if only you lived here. And at the time, I thought someday I would retire to Hannibal and I could volunteer. And then I thought, gosh, if they need me, why don't I go now? So I went to Quincy University across the river in Quincy, Illinois, and I went to work there. There are wonderful people there, and it was exciting. Got that set up, went to volunteer at the Boyhood home, went back to Florida to pack up my office and tell my dean I was leaving, and he said, nobody leaves a tenured position at their alma mater, and I said, I'm not leaving Stetson. In fact, I'm still very involved with Stetson. I said, I'm going to Mark Twain. And everyone who knows me 5 minutes knows that that makes sense. So I volunteered at the museum. I served on the board, and after about a year, the director there had taken a position. One thing led to another, and I became the director at the Mark Twain Boyhood Home and Museum. And I still can't believe it. To have a key to the Boyhood Home, to have a key to the Mark Twain House in Hartford, believe me, I haven't gone to work.
Charmed life.
I have charmed life. I'm the luckiest person I know. I say, if you're going to buy a lottery ticket, touch me for
there
good
you
luck,
go.
because I'm the luckiest person I know.
Remind me to touch that arm
there
after
you go.
this show.
Buy a lottery ticket.
Mark's looking at you right now saying there's a winner in that arm, let me tell you.
He is quite a hero to me, and not just to me, to so many. You know, I know Hal Holbrook thinks of him that way. Jimmy Buffett, one of my favorite people on the planet. And I suspected years ago, when I first became a Jimmy Buffett fan back in 1974, his songs are so lyrical and so rich with story, and so many songwriters today don't tell stories. And my sisters and I used to speculate. We'd say, he must read Mark Twain. Don't you think he reads Mark Twain? It sounds like he reads Mark Twain. And by golly, he came out in 1988 with a song called That's What Living Is to Me. I almost broke my neck getting to the phone the first time I heard it, the day it was released. I hear him quoting Mark Twain, and I said, what? And hit the rewind and got on the phone to my family. Did you hear it? Did you hear it? But he is a big Mark Twain fan and has written several songs about Mark Twain. So we keep good company in the Twainiac world.
National Geographic called the Mark Twain House and Museum one of the, quote, 10 best historic homes in the world. So again, obviously National Geographic heavy hitters joining the Cindy bandwagon here with the heaping the praise on Mark Twain. I have to ask now, we know Hal Holbrook just turned 90 in 2015. How old was Mark Twain when he passed?
He was 74.
74.
Hal has outlived his hero. It's interesting, you know, I mentioned Hal's documentary, and it's a very honest documentary and painful at times. He had a very challenging life and challenging to his family. He was very honest in his documentary, and I have a great respect for him. And, you know, Mark Twain suppressed his autobiography for 100 years. In fact, the third and final volume is a 2015 release. So to look at the two parallel lives, the one thing that fascinates me is that Hal Holbrook has been performing as Mark Twain longer than Samuel Clemens used the name Mark Twain.
Right, right. It's amazing. And then the other thing you mentioned too is that the we'll call it the juice just seems endless, because God bless him, Hal is still well and performing. And then you have this thing that came out a few years ago where all of a sudden, you know, the time capsule is opened, and I thought it was 2 volumes, so thank you for correcting me. All of a sudden you have, it's like Mark Twain is, or Samuel, Mark, whatever, is speaking from the great beyond, you know?
Yeah, he even wrote that. He said, I'm speaking freely and frankly from the grave. I can say anything I want now, and he literally planned it that way. What's also interesting, you know, we have great friends and colleagues out at University of California, Berkeley. The Mark Twain Project is housed there in the Bancroft Library. Tremendous Twain scholars, very generous of their time and their knowledge. You could email them day or night with a question. They'll get you the answer just as quickly as they can. And Ben Griffin, one of my favorite editors out there, who recently edited a beautiful little volume called A Family Sketch. And this is all pieces of writing that were really centered around Hartford and Elmira, the family years. Just really rich writing by Sam, by his wife Libby, and even by their daughter Susie, so very personal. But Ben was out here with Volume 2. He was the lead editor on that project. And we got to talking about things because of letters. Mark Twain was a prolific letter writer, some 15,000 letters in his lifetime that we know of. And I asked Ben, so I know letters are, you know, things are always being discovered here, there, and wherever. I said, what, is there some kind of an average? Can you talk about that? He said, yeah. He said, on average, 3 new letters per week are discovered by Mark Twain.
And of course, with technology, they can be verified as legitimate.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but that's amazing. We have one here from Bermuda from 1910, and that leads me into my next subject. Is besides the letter writing and exchange, he obviously traveled quite a bit, not just in this country, but abroad. Abroad,
our exhibition this year, the year of 2015, is Travel. Mark Twain's travel is fatal to prejudice. So yes, he traveled all around the world, wrote several books about his travels, and of course Bermuda was his favorite vacation spot. We did a partnership with the Masterworks Museum of Bermuda Art over there and loaned them a lot of Twain artifacts. It was wonderful. And I had the privilege of going into the National Archives there and looking through some things. And sure enough, in a scrapbook, I'm flipping along and I see his handwriting on a page. And I said, well, this is Mark Twain's. And you could read it was a very funny piece. You could tell he had written it, but it wasn't signed. And someone there said, well, how do you know that's his? It's not signed. I said, oh, believe me, I can spot that handwriting a mile away.
Wow.
And they weren't convinced. I said, do you mind if I take a picture? And they said, go ahead. So I sent the photo out to Berkeley. And Ben Griffin wrote back, there is laughter in the vault tonight. And I was so proud because this piece had been published in the Strand magazine in 1929, 19 years after Sam's death. And so they didn't know where the original was all those years. And it was called Etiquettical Requirements. And it was Mark Twain witnessing his very first cricket match. And he wrote some very funny observations about it. So for me, to find a little piece of paper tucked in a scrapbook in an archive in Bermuda, that even Berkeley didn't know where it was. It was a very proud moment for me. I will tell you that.
You're not only a historian. You're a what's it like a prospector. Mark Twain travel wherever necessary to dig up, and again, it just ties in with the fact that not only from obviously a periodical like this tribute to him from Time, but then also I believe it's through Random House, correct? The biographies that are, or the Mark Twain. Who put that out?
I should know.
I thought it was Random House, but I could be wrong.
And you know, I always think everything comes out of the University of
Hartford,
California Press because
yeah.
they have their own press out there. But the autobiography they might have gone with a commercial publisher.
I say, and I didn't know whether that was, because I thought, well, it's a pretty big firm. I said maybe that's was already in existence when he passed, so he made a deal with them. But again,
no, it was interesting. Toward the end of his life, they copyrighted his name, which was smart. And there is a firm that kind of monitors the use of Mark Twain's image and that name, Mark Twain, so people can pay royalties to that it's a law firm, and that was who his daughter set it up with all those years ago. And every year, they provide funding to the 4 primary Twain sites in different amounts to help us do our work. So he's still earning money to help preserve his own legacy. So I give him a lot of credit.
Now this is when you were in Hannibal, correct?
Yeah, that was my going away party. It makes me a little sad to see that Henry Sweet's my successor out there, and yet Henry has been there 30 plus years. David Mobley, my board president, and they presented me with this wonderful photograph of Mark Twain in front of his boyhood home in Hannibal that was taken on his last visit to Hannibal.
There you go.
So very special.
And
his grave in Elmira. People go there and leave things. I go there and leave things. I always leave a copy of the Mark Twain CD.
Now this is in Elmira, New York.
Elmira, New York.
Okay.
His wife was from Elmira. They spent 22 summers there.
I've been in Elmira, not a short ride from Connecticut.
No, but a pretty drive.
Yes,
I love going over there, and it's a place everyone should go. The family grave site is beautiful, and his tall marker, that's his short grave marker, but there's a tall marker there that's actually marking Twain. It's 2 fathoms in height, so it's 12 feet tall, and it has his image on it, which was in the news recently because someone had stolen it. They have now recovered it, but he's always in the news for something. But this is interesting. People leave lots of things. What I loved about this, there's a guitar pick on there.
I noticed that, yeah.
Which Sam played the guitar and the piano.
I didn't know that.
So I've seen cigars there. I leave the CD thinking the next person to pick it up will enjoy it on their road trip.
There you go.
I always go and pay my respects. And of course, Quarry Farm is there. It's not open to the public, but it's pretty much a time capsule. Twain scholars can go there and stay to research and work. I've put quite a few nights in there myself, and I love it. His Octagon writing study is in Elmira, but they've moved it from Quarry Farm out to Elmira College campus. And they really embrace Mark Twain in Elmira. I give Elmira a lot of credit. Their Chamber of Commerce, they call it Mark Twain country. They've recognized that he is so famous, they would be crazy not to embrace that. Even in Bermuda, they do a good job embracing of all their famous visitors, and they have many. Mark Twain is their most famous, and he is the one that you'll go anywhere you go in Bermuda. Funny story, my son got married 2 years ago and went to Bermuda for his honeymoon. A son is not supposed to call his mother during his honeymoon, am I right? And yet, I got a phone call from this odd number I didn't recognize. He said, "Mom, sorry to bother you, but Jess and I, his wife, they were walking along and said, everything's Mark Twain. Everybody's talking about Mark Twain. The cab drivers are pointing out Mark Twain sat under that tree. Mark Twain did this, he did that." He said, "We just had to call and tell you."
There you go.
So that was kind of nice.
All those years of giving crib notes and telling, okay, don't bring the subject now. It comes full circle, and now they're calling you with tidbits. That's pretty good.
I'm happy to say both my kids have grown up to be respectable Twainiacs in their own right.
There you go. Studio 411, joining us for the hour, Dr. Cindy Lovell, who is the executive director at the Mark Twain House and Museum, and doesn't have a book to plug. We'll talk about a few CD releases that she's been involved with, but just a wealth of information, and I feel like we're on a trip from Elmira to Bermuda. I was going to say Twain must have loved Bermuda, because all these areas you're talking about are cold weather areas. And with some of the winters we've had recently, I know if he was, I'm sure even Hal would hightail it back to the Southern California, one or the other.
Yeah.
This was something we asked Cindy's permission when she was in Missouri to show her dedication and loyalty to Mr. Mark Twain. She had a personalized license plate, so I said, "Oh, now I know it's the Show Me State," and now someone else in Missouri is the proud recipient. Or you probably told him, "Look, don't ever issue that again."
I think Captain Steve Terry on the Mark Twain riverboat was going to get down there and get in line to get it when I left.
There you go. That's great. Mark Twain House and Museum has an annual holiday house tour sponsored by Friends of the Mark Twain Museum. Talk about that yearly event. I've heard some wonderful things.
Oh.
Maybe she'll even invite me one year.
You're invited.
Thank you.
Consider yourself invited, Larry. I hope you come this year. I'm gonna make sure you come.
Very good.
First, I just have to give a shout out to the Friends of the Mark Twain House. This group of people founded this group many years ago. Many different leaders down through the years, but they have over the years raised more than $1 million for the Mark Twain House for different preservation efforts. They've raised money to bring in, to buy back certain pieces of furniture that belonged in the house. I can't say enough good things about the Friends. They are friends. They are the true meaning of the word friends. And the annual holiday house tour is their baby. They work very hard on this. They go out and find lovely homes in Hartford, owners willing to put their house on our holiday house tour. Local florists come in and decorate. These folks open up their homes for a Sunday in December, and people buy tickets, and hundreds of people pass through the Mark Twain House, which we do decorate for the holidays. And we know how the Clemens family decorated because they left a wonderful written record of that. So people can come in and see the Twain House decorated the way it would have been, and then they can go out and see these beautiful homes around Hartford, and it is a wonderful fundraiser for us. We net a lovely contribution from the Friends of about $20,000, so I'll be looking for you this year.
Very good. I would love to attend. Here she is, and if you notice, you probably can't tell, but Cindy's expression is like you would think it was really Samuel Clemens. Like I said, after a while it gets hard to differentiate between one and the other. But obviously that was at the most recent appearance. I had read that you brought down the house with a celebration with Hal Holbrook's 90th birthday. And
I was very proud of that. Hal is a big fan of President Obama. And with thanks to our friends in Senator Blumenthal's office, we were able to communicate with the White House, and we received a beautiful letter from President Obama wishing Hal a very happy 90th birthday. So to be able to read that letter to him on stage at the Bushnell on his birthday was one of the greatest honors of my life.
Very nice. I have to ask, the Boyhood home and where the museum in Hannibal is, when I hear about being near the Mississippi River and then Missouri, it's always in the news every couple of years. How is that area? Has it sustained any damage from like flooding?
Not in recent years. They finished the levee there in 1993, right before the big flood of '93. So Hannibal is always high and dry. Hannibal is always good to go, no matter what the flooding situation on the river is.
There you go. Real quick before we go into the Mark Twain CD, in 2016, through the grapevine, I hear that some commemorative coins are going to be released. So
very exciting.
So, yeah.
That's partly what brought me to Hartford, I think. The four primary Twain sites, Hartford, Hannibal, Elmira, and Berkeley, collaborated back in, gosh, we started working on this back in 2011 or so, but it was 2012 when President Obama signed into law the Mark Twain Commemorative Coin Act. And this is a project that's no cost to taxpayers. The U.S. Mint is told by Congress to make commemorative coins, and in this case 2016 will be a $5 gold piece with Mark Twain's image and a $1 silver coin with Mark Twain's image. The proceeds, they'll be sold to collectors, and the surcharge on this, like I said, it covers all manufacturing, no expense to any of us as taxpayers. But the yield from that, each of these 4 sites will yield $1.75 million. And it's money that will be very well and wisely spent for all 4 sites. The 2 homes are sorely lacking in endowment. In Hannibal, they have about $1.6 million. In Hartford, we have about $1.6 million. If you compare that with any of our neighbors in Hartford, it's absolutely shocking. It's a job I've assigned myself. I work very hard behind the scenes trying to educate people about our lack of endowment. That's the most important job I have, is to get our endowment in place so we don't have to worry about the future. I want to leave this planet knowing that 100 years from now, the staff at the Mark Twain House doesn't have the same kind of worry that our staff deals with every year putting together our annual budget. So endowment's very important to me.
There you go. We've got an image here, and I've got the real thing here in front of me if we can get a shot of this. A couple of years ago, you're listed as an executive producer along with Carl Jackson, a well-known producer. Tell us a little bit about this, because I know when we talked about this privately, I was shocked that this is like a who's who of people that are involved with this.
It really is. Back when I was still teaching at Stetson University, I knew that the year 2010 was coming up, the big, as I said, the year of Mark Twain, we called it, the 100th anniversary of his death. And I wanted to do something myself to honor Mark Twain. I just didn't know what. And it must have been about 2007 or 8 when I tracked Carl Jackson down. Now, Carl was a friend from childhood. My roots are in bluegrass music. I met Carl when he was 14. He's been a professional musician his entire life. He was playing banjo with a bluegrass band, and I met him. We became pen pals and friends. But then Glenn Campbell hired him, and he went off sort of to the big world of more country music, right? He worked for Glenn for, I think, 12 years during Glenn's zenith, and then he toured with Emmylou, Linda Ronstadt, you name it. He's played with everybody. So I followed his career as I would any friend, but we didn't keep in touch. And I bought his music down through the years. Well, he produced a CD that in 2004 won the Grammy for Best Country Album, and it won the Grammy for Best Vocal Collaboration with James Taylor and Alison Krauss singing one of the songs. And it was called Livin', Lovin', Losin', a tribute to the Louvin brothers. I tell you that because that CD just got into my blood. I couldn't stop playing it. I loved it. It was a flawless piece of work. And he had everybody, it was a who's who. Johnny Cash, Dolly, Emmylou, you name it, the person was on there, Merle Haggard, everybody. But one of the things that was so unique was that he actually tracked down some archival recording of the Louvin brothers speaking on stage. And I think that, as much as anything, it was just magical to me to hear that spoken word, and they would introduce a song and then you would hear the music of the new singers. So I had it on repeat in my car. I couldn't get enough of it. So I got to thinking, what could I do for Mark Twain? And it was something about that combination of spoken word and music. And at first I thought, well, maybe some Twain quotes, maybe some songs about the Mississippi River. I didn't know. But through a friend, I tracked down Carl's phone number. We hadn't spoken in years. I think we hadn't spoken since I was 15 years old. And I called this number. He answered the phone. I said, do you remember me? He said, yes. I said, will you help me make a Mark Twain CD? He said, yes. And during that time, I moved to Hannibal, became a member of the board, and then became the director. And I knew the real financial situation. And then I realized this was a project that belonged to Mark Twain. I don't make a dime on this project. I never have. I helped write the checks to help make it. I went to my dear friends and said, please, can you donate to help pay for studio, to help pay to have things produced? And my friends came together. And it really is a who's who. We ended up with Clint Eastwood as the voice of Mark Twain, Jimmy Buffett, my fellow Twainiac, as Huckleberry Finn, and it doesn't get any better than that. And Jimmy loved it so much he put it on his label, Mailboat Records. Garrison Keillor, another wonderful storyteller, and I think of him as a Twainiac. He pays a lot of tribute to Mark Twain. Garrison narrated it, and I'm so proud because I wrote the project in the sense that I wrote the narration. Carl and I worked together to select the right songs. So it tells Mark Twain's life chronologically, from his birth under Halley's Comet to his death under Halley's Comet, and that's a spoken word and song. We had to come up with a lot of new songs for the project, and I'm very proud to say that my little sister wrote a song on there called Run Mississippi that went to #2 on the bluegrass charts, and Rhonda Vincent, who recorded it for us.
I've seen Rhonda, very talented.
She is, oh my goodness, I can't say enough about Rhonda
Sheryl
Vincent.
Crow, Brad Paisley, Vince Gill, Ricky Skaggs, of course. Just tremendous stuff.
Great talent on here, and Rhonda has made Run Mississippi her signature song. She closes every show with Run Mississippi, and I'm just so proud of that. And I got to tell you how that came to be. I was living in Hannibal. I had driven out to Pennsylvania to see my family, and my family's a good creative bunch, and they're like me. They like to do a project, and I said, now, I need your ears. I need your imagination. Let me read to you what I've written. Give me your feedback. Let me play the songs that I've penciled in so far, because each song tells a story. For instance, you know, he was born under Halley's Comet. So the first song is a beautiful song that was written by Mary Chapin Carpenter called When Halley Came to Jackson. That's about the comet. She actually wrote that song for Eudora Welty, who was also born under Halley's Comet. But Emmy Lou sings it here for us. So I did this. I was reading to them and playing songs for them. And I get to the third track, which this is the young boy living by this river. At that time, I lived in Hannibal. I knew that river. This isn't some ordinary river. This is the river by which all other rivers are compared in Mark Twain's world, and I could see why living there. He once saw a river, he said, if that were my river, I wouldn't leave it out nights where any dog could come along and lap it up. So, I mean, this river song had to be powerful. It couldn't just be like wandering water. It had to be very, very powerful. And I imagined Rhonda Vincent singing it, because Rhonda is a Missouri girl, and she has a beautiful, strong voice. So I described my dilemma, and we moved on. I continued reading and playing little clips, and they would suggest things, and I would go to iTunes and buy songs and listen to them. And we got through the evening, and my sister went home, and I stayed there. I was staying at my niece's. About an hour and a half later, I got a text from my sister saying, "Are you still up?" I said, "Yeah, what's up?" She said, "I think I might have just written your Mississippi River song." I said, "Great, make me a little demo." I sent it down to Carl Jackson, and he put his magic to it, and we have Run Mississippi. I'm really, really proud of that.
Now, is she also a Twainiac, or was that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm the worst in my family, but they're all guilty. We love Sam Clemens.
The influence doesn't fall far in this family, let me tell you. There's a close-up shot of a recent appearance. There's Hal without all the Mark Twain makeup, although I think I read this quote either from you or from somebody that talked about his appearances, is that the beauty of it now, you don't need a lot of makeup, because now he's, as you said, he's even older than Mark Twain was at his peak. So
this was taken at Salute Restaurant, downtown Hartford. This was his 90th birthday party after the performance. We went out
now,
for a lovely dinner.
I meant to ask you, is that you in the
That's
center?
That's me. I'm out there working the crowd, saying hello to everybody. Thank you for coming.
I looked, I said, is she doing like Jerry Lewis used to do at the MD television? He used to go around with buckets, and he would take pennies, dollars, whatever he could, give to Mark Twain.
You can see over my left shoulder, if you notice the man standing with the white hair, that is Hal's son, David Holbrook.
Okay.
We had a lot of his family in town that night. His daughter Eve, his son David, and Dixie Carter's daughter,
who
Mary
passed away a few years ago.
Mary Dixie was there that night, so it was a lovely family event. His 2 grandchildren were there. Just a wonderful family event afterwards. We had a little private birthday party down at Salute.
Nice.
It was very nice.
Dixie Carter, by the way, for those who I'm sure you would remember, was one of the female stars of the long-running CBS series Designing Women. And Hal used to appear on there, right? And then also, didn't he also appear on Evening Shade?
I believe.
Burt Reynolds' show,
and he has performed in Sons of Anarchy. He's a very busy actor. He's a real working actor.
Well, he was just nominated for an Academy Award about 3-4 years ago. He didn't win, but I mean, boy, I tell you, what an honor.
He's out there. He was, the last film Dixie made was That Evening Sun. Now, there's a movie I could plug. It's a Southern Gothic film, beautifully written, beautifully filmed, lots of Jimmy Rogers music, really nice. That Evening Sun, and in the film, Dixie portrays his late wife. Now, it was during that filming, the director of that, Scott Teems, was encouraged by Dixie to make a documentary about Hal. And Scott will tell you that he thought Hal Holbrook, Mark Twain show was something like a Vegas act. He really didn't have a sense of what it actually was. And he didn't think much. He thought, oh, that's nice. He felt very honored that she would suggest that, but he didn't think about it too seriously. But then Dixie got ill and passed very suddenly. That was unexpected. And Scott really got to thinking about it, so he sat down and talked to Hal, and they decided he'd go for it. And so it was Scott Teems who made That Evening Sun, which is a brilliant film, a beautiful film. It was their last film they ever made, that Dixie ever made. Of course, they weren't it together, and it was Scott who then made this documentary, Holbrook Twain, An American Odyssey.
I was going to say, that's a kind of comical Vegas act. That's the people in Nevada should be so lucky to see.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Not on the Strip, though. I don't know about that.
Yeah, and you know, there's so many people that go out and they do the little one-liners, and it's just throwaway, and it's not real. Hal Holbrook, I mean, I was in New Hampshire. It was about a year around the anniversary of the Boston bombing. So it was a year ago. I was in New Hampshire to see Hal perform live. He was unveiling a brand new piece that he had taken from Huckleberry Finn. He had never done it before. And it was about gun violence. And I'll tell you what, for a man of his age, for anybody of any age to memorize yet another 27-minute in length piece, this powerful piece that starts out one way and quickly becomes the truth, that's painful, that's powerful. And I would tell you that at first, you know, people were, you know, you could see they were leaning forward, they were very interested. Then they became so still, they couldn't move. By the end of that piece, people around me were crying, openly crying. It was so powerful. And I give Hal a ton of credit because he's brave. He takes on issues that he knows are going to make people upset, but it's going to make people think.
But even in terms of, obviously, at his age, but again, a trained actor of his magnitude, memorizing these things, you know, it's part of their DNA, in my opinion.
Right.
But it's just with these first two, and then the soon-to-be third volume of Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens's, you know, writings that have been released. I mean, that's like a treasure trove of material, not just for you, the reader, you, the Twainiac, but here's someone who has spent, you know, the better part of his life, and it's like, wow, it's like a treasure trove, you know, so I can only imagine. Another project in 2015 that you've been involved with, you mentioned it to me, and I was like, I didn't like make heads or tails of what it was. I knew it was something musical. Orthophonic Joy, the 1927 Bristol Sessions Revisited. Nothing about Mark Twain per se, no?
There's a Mark Twain quote in that.
Okay.
But
it's
not about Mark
tell us
Twain.
how this came about.
Well,
this is another thing you've executive produced, right?
Right. Well, I wrote the narrative for this. The Mark Twain project that we did was wonderful. We had a contract. We had a Nashville lawyer who worked with us to get our paperwork done. And in the contract, we actually had two different places they could sign. They could sign and say, yes, I agree to the standard royalty rates, which is business industry standard, or yes, I agree to that rate, but I'm donating it to the Mark Twain Boyhood Home and Museum Endowment Fund. And I got to tell you, these generous people not only gave their time and talent, but then to sign away their royalties to this. They made this a true labor of love for Mark Twain. And that was wonderful. So that became a benefit for the endowment fund for the Mark Twain Boyhood Home in Hannibal. Orthophonic Joy, Carl Jackson was tapped. Tennessee Tourism and Virginia Tourism sponsored this project. Now, if you know your geography, Bristol, Tennessee and Bristol, Virginia share the state line, and they're down there in Appalachia, they're down in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's a beautiful part of the country, and it is rich in musical talent. Back in 1927, 2-week temporary recording studio was set up there. An executive from the Victor Company came down, and the Orthophonic Joy, it's an odd name, but they had come up with this this new way to record, this electromagnetic system that they could record very clearly. John Philip Sousa heard it and said, oh, it's the first time a talking machine really sounds, music really sounds wonderful on this thing. So Victor was selling just millions of dollars worth of these things. And in 1927, they were hungry, these execs were hungry for new music. And every genre, well, hillbilly music, they called it this, mountain music, country music, folk music, they had a lot of names for it. But this exec knew Pop Stoneman, who was at that time, you know, earning a living as a musician. And Pop said, come on down to this area. It's rich in talent, and these people can't get in a car and come to New York to you. You come down here, bring the studio to them. It was genius. they set up this little recording studio, and people poured in from around. The ad for this system said, "Don't deny yourself the sheer joy of orthophonic music." So Carl named this project Orthophonic Joy. But back during the original sessions, all these people came out and recorded, including, it was the first time that the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers were ever recorded. So it really launched their career. Carl got a hold of me and said, they want to do it like the Twain Project. They want narrative, they want spoken word and song. Will you write the narrative? So I was deeply honored. My roots are in Appalachian music. My family played bluegrass. This is what I grew up. We didn't have TV. We played music.
Oh, yeah.
And to be able to research and write that background. And this project has Dolly Parton, Kebmo, Steve Martin and the Steep Canyon Rangers, Vince Gill, Emmylou Harris, again, Sheryl Crow, just this lovely cast of characters. Carl Jackson just simply, again, outdid himself. And this became a benefit for the Birthplace of Country Music Museum in Bristol, Tennessee. Congress declared Bristol the birthplace of country music in 1998. I think most folks think it's Nashville because Nashville's sort of the commercial mecca, and rightfully so, people record there. But Bristol's what really started it all. These recording sessions that took place over this 2-week period, that's really what launched this into the world of consumerism, of buying this kind of music. So to honor it in that way, I just recently was in Bristol and visited the museum, and we're actually working on a project to collaborate on an exhibition tying Mark Twain, and believe it or not, because Mark Twain played the guitar and the piano and he loved the old original music. There's a beautiful tie in there. He wrote about the banjo. So we're working on a collaboration with the folks in Bristol, and very excited about that.
That's great. And I remember that phrase, orthophonic, because I remember a lot of the old, some even before my time, but I think even LPs, but then certainly the 78s, RCA really used to use that term a lot. I'm surprised that they didn't have that like almost copyrighted or whatever. Right.
If you go onto eBay and put in orthophonic, which I have done, you know, you'll see the records with Elvis Presley. You know, it's an orthophonic recording. Yeah, very common.
I didn't, you know, I knew it was something about, you know, the style or the presentation of the sound. I didn't know, but it was just something that always stuck with me as a music and a record lover about, oh, this, you know, you immediately thought of them, just like you would think of, you know, that little image that with, you know, Columbia Records back in the day, you know, and then things changed, but there was always remnants of these images. We're here with Dr. Cindy Lovell, Executive Director of the Mark Twain House and Museum. We'd be remiss, we touched on it a little bit, something you said earlier, again, about places like the Mark Twain House. I mean, there's so many others that, again, are either nonprofit or not-for-profit. And there was recently, as there seems to be every year, news clippings, you know, internet postings about organizations such as that, or as we'll put it, art leaders worried about proposed cuts, again, in this case for the state of Connecticut. Obviously, I'm sure it's a problem that affects all states and all museums like that. And again, as you said, it's kind of like your life's goal that, you know, hopefully through so many of these different projects, things that you've got stewing in your head that you want to do, that hopefully, you know, organizations, not just Mark Twain, but so many others, that, you know, won't have to go through this yearly battle with, are we going to be able to keep the doors open? Or, I mean, every time you turn around, there's some, we'll call it lesser venue that has to, you know, shutter its doors.
Right, it happens all the time. That's why endowment's the key, and I learned all of this sort of the backwards way. I didn't set out into work into the nonprofit sector, but I love Mark Twain, and I feel like I work for him. In fact, I feel like he's my boss. I have a wonderful board. They're a very engaged, hardworking board, but I feel like I answer to Sam Clemens, and I recognize endowment is the key. And to say that the Mark Twain House has a $1.6 million endowment, it's shocking. It's shocking if you compare it to any endowment in Hartford. It's just abysmal. I
mean, there are colleges that you hear phrases, I'm not going to name any, but there's many here in Connecticut, not to mention other parts of the country, that have endowment funds or whatever you want to call it, that are in, you know, nearly, you know, billions, you know, and just, and here's something that...
we have to do it. I feel like I have to lead by example. I have a pledge to the Mark Twain House myself. I have a payroll deduction, comes right out of my paycheck every week, that goes right to the endowment fund. Something I started in Hannibal that we do in Hartford, we call Dollar at the Door. And I thank all the grocery stores because they've conditioned us to be okay with this. Our folks don't come in every day to get a gallon of milk. Our folks come in, take a tour, and we might never see them again. So as the family of 2 or 3 or 4 or 6, as they're paying their admission fee to come in, we are a tourist destination, we do charge an admission fee. We get to that subtotal point, and our wonderful guides ask, would you be willing to donate $1 to our endowment fund? And our guides raise about $1,000 a month that way.
Wow.
So we're trying to do every kind of grassroots thing we can. I'm trying to be on message and meet with people one-on-one and look them in the eye and say, have you thought about planned giving? Have you thought about the Mark Twain House and what it means to the state of Connecticut? Think beyond Connecticut, what it means to the citizens of the world. We bring people from 75 different countries every year in all 50 states. Mark Twain is as recognizable around the world as Mickey Mouse and Elvis Presley. Maybe more beloved than those two. I mean, I don't want to get into a contest with any iconic figure, but Mark Twain is all that. His words are powerful and people love him, but we have to take care of this legacy.
I think a lot of it, again, just as a side note, just my opinion, I think a lot of it with any organization that is trying to, grassroots, I think a lot of it has to start within the schools. You have to, which I'm sure you probably do, but again, when I was a kid, you'd go to the, Culinary Art Institute, or you'd go to the, Peabody Museum, or you'd go to this one, that one. Mark Twain, I don't recall if it was around them, but my point was that's, kind of, you get it in their heads at a young age, and then the fruits work from there. And then they say, oh, mom and dad or whatever, take me here, go there. And, again, that's kind of one way to look at it anyway.
Sure. Well, I want the kids to read Mark Twain. He's not required reading here. He is required reading in China, believe it or not.
Wow.
And we've been very busy making inroads with Chinese tourism. We now have 2 different Chinese tour groups a week coming to the Mark Twain House. This is a very big deal. We're proud of that. The Chinese love Mark Twain across the board, and he spoke out and championed for their rights long ago. He never visited China, but he was very supportive of the Chinese. Back when he was in San Francisco, out west, when he was a bachelor, he saw the persecution of the Chinese, and he wrote out against that in the newspapers there. In Hartford, he helped with the Chinese education mission. He wrote about the treaty with China. He was always involved with human rights, and the Chinese really respect him for that. And I'm thrilled that we're now working with them, and we have visitors coming from Shandong province. We have people coming from all over the world. But he is so beloved anywhere you go. I gave a talk in London last year. He founded the Kensal Rise Library over there and donated books. And they were about to close that library several years ago, and folks at the Mark Twain House, Jacques Lamar, wrote a letter of support. We were out in Hannibal. Everybody rallied, and they love him everywhere.
There you go. No doubt. No doubt. We have to continue this another time. I'm sure within the next couple of years there'll be more stuff. I'll just have to do my research or whatever, and I'm sure Cindy will inform me of, write this down and write that, and all I have to do is contact her, and again, we'll have all the information we need for another visit, more projects. Dr. Cindy Lovell, Executive Director at the Mark Twain House and Museum, and there it is right there with a beautiful evening shot. Right here in our own backyard, Hartford, Connecticut. Again, I thank you for taking time to visit us, and best of luck. And
thank you, Larry.
Our best to Mr. Holbrook, too. Maybe we can get him on with your next visit via telephone.
I'll work on that, and if I don't see you before, I will definitely see you at the next Holiday House
Absolutely.
tour.
I look forward to the invitation.
Thank you for having me on
Thank
your show.
you. And we've come to the end of another episode of Studio 411. We thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the hour, and we will see you next time. Take care.